come once again to discuss things.
Milan, since you're the one that brought the guest, why don't you go ahead and do the intro? Yep.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, genders, sexualities, and preferences. This is your friend and compatriot, Milan, Shifting 1992 here, and welcome, my dear listeners, to the Geeky Gentleman. I am joined by my good friend Ian, also known as Sid Part 2. Say hello, my friend.
Hello, my friend.
Also, I am we all of us are joined by an extraordinarily special guest from all the way down here, from Australia, the place where I reside, Mr. Aussie Griffin. Say hello, my dear.
Hello, my dear isn't usually my intro, but guys, it's good to be here on the cast with you.
Well, thanks for coming on. Since Milan tried to make fun of me earlier for saying your handle, I'm just gonna call you Griffin.
Works for me.
So that way Milan cannot make fun of me. Ah, shit! I just remembered something. I should have brought this up before we were recording, but fuck it, I'm kind of like committed to it now. So before we start the topic, I actually have a question for Milan.
Yeah.
Alright, so this is gonna sound weird, and I know you're not a Star Wars fan, but just stick with me here, okay? So Bobby and I were talking the other night, because he and I did a Game of Thrones season premiere video on his channel. He and I were hanging out and talking, and I swear this is the weirdest sounding thing, but we came up with a really cool premise for a Star Wars X-Men crossover fan film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like, alright, I know it sounds crazy, but I've come into some money, and I was wondering, you know, I think you're, like, a really good actor and stuff, Milan. I'm thinking about paying to have you, like, come out here if you'd be willing to play a couple parts. Would you be down for that?
If you pay for me to come to America, I'll literally suck your dick, dude.
Alright, well,
no,
like,
I
here's
will
the
get
thing.
down on my knees.
I want you to play, like, one Star Wars character and one X-Men. Not X-Men, but X-Man character.
Yeah.
Alright, so do you think you'd be able to play Jabba the Hutt and the Blob?
Like I said, you paid for this, and I'll...
Oh, no. None of this is serious. That was all just to insult you.
You brought this opportunity to visit a foreign land? Like, I'm serious, dude. I'll suck your dick if you get me over there. I will get down on my knees, whip out your thin, long, mixed mulatto Johnson, shove it down my throat, and I will make you come. I will make you come.
No one is listening at this point, I thought that was a pretty good joke. I thought it was a pretty good burn.
No one's ever listening to
Milan's pretty good at recovering.
Shit.
Oh.
Yeah, no one's listening.
Milan's pretty good at recovering. Anyway.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, so welcome to this week's episode of Geeky Gentlemen. Since no one's listening after Milan describing fellatio, like, here's the thing about Milan. In my head, Milan trying to suck my dick is like the most terrifying thing. Like, you could probably make a horror movie out of Milan being like the killer, and all he's trying to do is suck dicks, but like the people keep trying to get away, and it's just like the slasher flick.
Oh. Ouch.
Oh. Hey man, stop trying to run away. I'm trying to pleasure you.
Okay, anyway. No, but welcome.
We have degenerated so quickly.
He has.
Yeah,
he lives
it really did.
He's been around King's
welcome.
Cross, man. There are actual prostitutes that sound like that. They make good livings too. Go figure.
They do.
Anyway,
fucking whores are loaded, man. Jesus.
Shut up. Alright, so this week on Geeky Gentlemen, to announce the topic, we're going to be discussing morality in comic books.
Because we have any.
Now, I got a general impression from that, and I'm going to describe what I understood from it, and hopefully that will lead us, that'll be in line enough with what Milan meant. Morality in comic books, to me, means what kinds of morality we see the heroes or anti-heroes express, and what our opinions on those moral stances are. Does that sound about right to you, Milan?
That is correct.
Okay, excellent.
Might I add a small extension on that one?
Sure, go ahead.
It doesn't necessarily go to it goes to any protagonist, not just the heroes. It goes to the villains in a lot of cases. In fact, they're actually better for the moral arguments than anyone else.
Yeah, I just, we're gonna start with heroes, obviously, because...
And we work from there.
Yeah, I mean, heroes naturally lead to villains. It's kind of weird to start with a villain, I think. But, yeah, we'll start with heroes. Interesting way, I think, to start this. Which comic book character do you find lines up with... Comic book hero, let me rephrase that. Which comic book hero do you think lines up with your own moral standpoint the best?
Ooh.
Griffin, why don't you start?
Yeah. Hit the guy who's more of a TV and film nerd. Yeah, I'd probably have to go closer to the Question. A guy who a lot of people describe as a Randian objectivist. Mostly because he's absurd. If you've ever seen any of my videos, and let's face it, nobody has seen any of my videos. I think I got an audience of all about 200 people, and for those people, I'm sorry. But yeah, But the Question is the kind of guy who gets stuff done, goes outside the law when it's unjust, but he's always worried that he's going to overstep his bounds. Not that far out from Batman, but he's willing. But he's more of a. He's not as much of an idealist as Batman. So
okay.
I don't know if you guys have seen Justice League Unlimited.
Oh yeah, of course.
We were raised on that shit, son.
Fair point. Okay, so, yeah, anyone here in Australia, if you've ever seen Justice League Unlimited, it's because you've got insomnia and you're up at, friggin' 5 a.m. They don't even put it on the kids' time slot anymore because it's too adult for the kids, and it's not popular enough for the adults. Fucking Australia. Anyway, so basically, you take Batman. Let's analyze Batman versus the Question to see where I wind up. Batman is a guy who says, I will not kill, I will give everyone a second chance, and if you've read any Grant Morrison stuff, he's spared the Joker's life more times than anyone else could conceive of. Because one, he's a good he's a good foil for him as a villain, but two, he refuses to kill people on moral grounds. Just in case, you're never sure if you're wrong or if somebody's going to turn over a new leaf and, become, like a guy who raises puppies in their spare time. The Question, on the other hand, is smart. And Batman himself has said he's arguably as smart as he is, possibly more so, but he's too unhinged. The thing is, the Question's like, no, I figured it out. That's right, I can swear on this podcast, can't I?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Real quick, sorry to cut in.
Go on.
Do you have a headphone mic on, or I'm hearing some kind of background noise?
Oh,
yes.
That's typing.
Sorry,
typing.
yeah, sorry, I'll do that. I'll stop doing that. All right, good. All right, so
go ahead and continue though.
Yeah, so like I was saying, the Question is more of a realist. His than Batman is. He makes snap decisions on stuff, which on the one hand has kept him alive. On the other hand, it's made him a hell of a lot more, almost as many enemies, though different ones, as Batman's morality has. So that's kind of where I sit. I'm more like the Question, the guy with no face who does whatever needs to be done.
Okay, Milan, how about you?
Well, I hate to sound like that guy, but what the hell? Is somebody wrestling an alligator?
No, sorry, just moving in the chat.
Anyway, I hate to be, I don't want to sound conceited but when I say this, I mean this genuinely. I try to model my ethics on Superman. To be honest, the All-Star Superman rendition of Superman, I try to I try to be super cool about everything, and try to be as nice as I possibly can. And I know for our listeners, seeing Milan in any positive light whatsoever, is akin to a sin, punishable by excommunication. But
I just want to cut in here just to remind everybody. All right, so Milan's saying I model myself after Superman, but not 5 minutes ago ranted about how he would force me to let him suck my dick, which is something I don't think I could see Superman doing.
Well, that's when money was involved. I'm not saying I am Superman. I try to model myself after him. But if you're gonna buy me a ticket to America where I don't have to, I would suck Aussie Griffin's dick. I would genuinely do so because he bought me a ticket to another. No, I would. Next time I see you, it's going in my mouth.
It was a cheap. Okay, no, that just sounds wrong. Okay, look, the flight was not that expensive. It's one of those things that you book it far enough in advance, and the thing was, this was an event that was not going to happen any other time. So, look, like I said, it's not really a, what do you call it? Yeah, it's not an issue. Can we go back to talking about the morality of superheroes? Anyhow.
Okay.
Talk about Superman, Milan.
But, okay, sorry. It's Superman.
Yeah.
Yes. I try, I only really realized this when my friend Ian kind of brought this up in a really private, very heartfelt chat, and I thought to myself, yeah, I guess I kind of did from the longest time, and still do, see Superman as the benchmark that I have to jump up and try to reach. I know I'm not perfect, and no one's perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but I always saw Superman as being someone who's, essentially cosmically aware, and who, can take a lot of bullshit, but who, at the very cornerstone of himself, would, is a decent human being who would even give fucking Darkseid a chance if he thought that, he was genuinely, felt bad about what he did. And,
okay.
Yeah, and technically he did. So, Ian, what about you, man? Where did you come in?
Well, this will create an interesting start point to debate, but go ahead and let me get my thing out first and say why. Not that I personally hold myself to the same standards as Batman, but I'm going to choose Batman because his form of morality is the one I like the most. It's not necessarily, I'm kind of cheating, it's not necessarily the one I hold myself to, but it's the one I find the most admirable, and I would if I were a better person. See, by my own morality, I can admit that I'm not a good person. Anyway, so
trust me, you could be worse.
Here's the thing that I like about Batman, and Superhero Enthusiasts and I just did a whole video about Superman, Batman, and Nietzsche, talking about the idea of the Overman and who applies to it better. Neither of them are perfect, but I definitely find that Batman works a lot better with it. And in Nietzsche's discussion of the Overman, there's a lot of quotes and misconceptions about Nietzsche out there that he thinks morality is this awful thing that is just for weak-minded people. And he did, but when he said morality, he meant the Christian form of morality that existed in his time period and still exists quite a bit today.
I think
that being said, hold on, let me get out.
Yeah.
That being said, Nietzsche wouldn't be one to condone going and raping someone.
No.
And neither would Batman. For Nietzsche and for Batman, the form of morality that is correct is the form of morality that the Overman imposes, and he imposes it by himself and holds himself to its standards that he created. It's completely created through the will to power. So that's where Batman stands. Is he is very much a person that will not compromise his own moral standpoint, no matter the situation. And Griffin, you made a point about the Joker, and I want to make a counterpoint real quick about it, and then we can get back to it.
You're on.
So, the argument you made was any normal person would have killed the Joker, but Batman holds himself to arguably an unrealistic standard of morality. To be fair, we're talking about fictional characters.
Yeah.
And the question is much more of a realist and would have killed the Joker long ago, and that's totally a fair point.
Would've.
The thing about who the Joker is to Batman as the Overman in this Nietzschean, let's go with that and pretend it doesn't sound like a Mexican dish, Nietzschean perspective. Batman is the Overman, and the Joker is the Abyss. And, there's that very famous quote from Nietzsche, if you stare long into the Abyss, remember also that the Abyss stares back to you.
Yeah.
And Joker is the Abyss. Joker is this, black hole that just consumes everything, and he does it with a smile on his face, and he's just this ultimate danger. And honestly, he wants to be killed by Batman, which is why Batman doesn't do it. It doesn't matter the good that it would do society. To Batman, from his own moral perspective, it's more important to be right than to save people. Because if he kills the Joker, then in his mind, everybody's doomed. And that's...
so basically, Batman spends his time...
That's certainly not a very, fellow man, let's do the best for our fellow man perspective. That's not a value ethics perspective. It's a very deontological perspective. But go ahead, Milan.
Yeah.
So basically, what you're saying is Batman spent the majority of his fictional life staring into the Joker's vast and cavernous expanse.
Butt sex. Anyway.
Yeah,
that was the most...
someone had to say that one. We had to get back to the gutter. How I missed this gutter.
We live in the gutter. This podcast is placed firmly in the gutter.
No, Milan, I think you are the abyss that drags this podcast into the gutter.
I am your Joker. I am the Geeky Gentleman's Joker.
Anyway, Griffin, go ahead and reply, because I know you're going to want to,
just a little bit. Yeah, I was just going to say, I never got that from, this is why I said the question. I'm being dead honest with you here. The question winds up, if you watch Justice League Unlimited, like I obsessively have and still have the box set, what I was going to say is, and let me tell you, you can't get that in Australia if you don't know where to look. The question is a kind of guy who believes that there is a cut-off point to mercy or to sympathy or forgiveness, which, as I was mentioning, that's why I was mentioning it to you before the podcast got started. If you ever look into the people who study psychopathy or deviant psychology, there's only so much mercy you should grant a person before you basically got to lock them up for their own good, if nobody else's.
Yeah, and I hate to interrupt. To be fair, a lot of the reason that the Joker is a continual problem for Gotham City is because it simply creates good drama.
Yeah, exactly.
Batman always locks him up and tells him to throw away the key, keep him in the darkest, deepest cell. And I mean, Arkham has let the fucker out. There are numerous stories where Arkham just lets him go. So, it's not always Batman's fault. But go on, I'm sorry.
No. Joker's Millions was a great example of that. And if you want to... Actually, as a slight side note, and this doesn't detract from it, but just for the 10 or 20 people listening, before I was put on the podcast, I said, dude, you can go down a tangent, but stay about 2 steps away from, coming back to the point. In the episode Joker's Millions from the Batman the Animated Series from the early 1990s, it was 1992, 1993, give or take. Anyway, he... basically, they rip off, I think it was Batman Returns, the comic book, and basically Joker gets left a fortune by one of his rivals and spends a lot of it to get himself out of Arkham Asylum by claiming he was psychologically traumatized, and claiming and basically buying off his shrinks and everything else with money, sports cars, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, definitely.
So there you got to ask yourself: Batman isn't technically at fault for not killing the Joker. Okay, I can give you that one. But on the other hand, society keeps, like you said, they keep letting him go. He's you could argue, is a manifestation of the immorality of the city, which goes into the Watchmen territory of moving the question over into being Rorschach.
Yeah, you can definitely argue that. And like I said, there's a very big problem when talking about comics, and comic book characters in general, because they've been around. Batman just celebrated his 75th anniversary, and it's not been the same character the entire time. He's gone through multiple evolutions, just like the Joker has, and it needs to be a continuing format. So whenever you talk about these characters in a big general way, you got to kind of keep in mind the overall narrative
and who was writing the character. Yeah,
like ideally, like if comics had an endpoint. If like there was going to be a last Batman story, either Joker's dead or in prison forever.
Yeah, or like I was thinking Prometheus style, like chained to a rock for all eternity, with a crow or an at or some bird pecking out his liver, which regrows every night. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Joker's out of the picture by the end of Batman's last story. Joker's done for. So that's something that's important to keep in mind. If this story were to ever have an endpoint, when Neil Gaiman wrote Whatever Happened to the Last Crusader, Whatever Happened to the Caped Crusader, every version, like everyone tells different versions of the story of how Batman died, and it's Batman dealing with a near-death experience and like the hallucinations or whatever you want to call it that one goes through at that time.
Oh, yeah.
And Joker is in the funeral that they're holding for Batman, and in one of the stories, the Joker's the one that killed him, but you get the very clear sense that Joker's not going to be a problem anymore for the city. So it's just important to keep those kind of things in mind when talking about it. Yes, Joker continually gets out, but citing that is not really that fair a point, because if the comics weren't this popular, it wouldn't keep happening.
Yeah, okay, fair.
You want the Joker to stop escaping from prison? Do your part. Stop buying comic books with the Joker in it.
All the blood of those fictional people's all that fictional blood is on your hands.
America.
Either that or
thanks, Obama.
Yeah, I heard about that joke.
Anyway,
what joke?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I keep jumping in on you, man.
No. Thanks, Obama. Yeah.
I know. It's not a joke. It's a serious political statement.
Yes. Yes, of course it is. We will accept that for now. Anyway, so, yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. Okay, he's a fictitious character, and let's be honest here, Batman has never run out of villains to run after or criminals. Hell, you could even have a successor to the Joker, and it would probably still be just as good just as good a storyline. Would it be it wouldn't be the same, but it'd be a different kind of evil. But yeah, I get what you're saying as far as endorsing Batman's morality in terms of his in terms of him trying to set the better example, like Nietzsche would always say. And I get Nietzsche's angle on things, because if you're trying to impose morality on people and you're not doing that well, then either you're either undermining yourself deliberately, which, believe me, I can reel off 10, 20 million examples right off the top of my head, or you're giving people higher standards than they have the ability to live up to, which is what Nietzsche was talking about. So I'm following you on that one, right?
Yeah.
Word. So that's actually why I like the question, because he deviates from that. He says he takes the role of what I might, in Machiavellian terms, what you might think of as a gardener. He's the guy who, who sets people up to fail, sting operations, whatever it takes, and shows that they haven't. He looks for the people who aren't going to get better, or for the larger conspiracies that are stopping people from getting better.
Yeah.
On the other hand, he doesn't stop looking even when everyone else has given up.
Yeah. Let me just throw this out there, and I'll respond to that real quick. I would kill to have Quentin Tarantino direct a Question movie.
I would kill to have the Question movie exist, and then be killed by the Question.
If you could, you'd totally want Quentin Tarantino there, because I cannot imagine a better fit. Anyway, I get what you're saying. The Question is very much is incredibly cutthroat when he needs to be. In one of the episodes of Justice League Unlimited, he was ready to kill Lex Luthor to save Superman's image and to save.
To say that, yeah.
Yeah, that was great episode. Great episode.
The Question is a very brass tacks virtue ethics, where it doesn't matter if what I'm doing is wrong as long as the consequences are good.
Yeah, he's Batman if he took a massive budget cut.
Yeah, the Question is totally okay with... let me rephrase this. The Question thinks killing is wrong everywhere and always, but he's willing to do it if it leads to better circumstances. And I understand that perspective, but I still don't. But I don't have to like it. I don't have to enjoy it.
No, I never said I enjoyed it.
No, I got you.
I
I'm
like
just
the way
saying
the character's written. I like him for comic relief more than anything else. But yeah,
I get you there. My point being, I don't have to agree with it. Not that you were saying I have to, but that's the point I'm making is just because I understand the perspective, just because it might be a very effective ethical perspective, doesn't mean it's the right one, and doesn't mean it's the one that I want to aspire to in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I was gonna.
So that's my perspective on that.
That's fair enough. Now, you said you wanted to kick this back to Milan for a sec?
Yeah, Milan, this is actually a really good place, since Milan's been surprisingly quiet. I think he's just enjoying listening to you and I talk.
Mm-hmm.
Milan, let's bring Superman into this equation, because I've always thought of Superman, especially the All-Star Superman. I mean, this is completely undeniable to anyone that's seen the movie or read the book. I've always thought that Superman has filled the role as a Jesus allegory, and I've said it a million times. I think that Superman's a better Jesus than Jesus, but I'm interested.
I've been saying that for years, man. Yeah.
And I don't mean to offend anyone by that. It's not something I'm saying as a joke or anything. I honestly believe that if you look at them both as, fictional moral guiding lights, I think that Superman fulfills the role a lot better.
Oh, definitely.
But anyway, Milan, let's go ahead and bring Superman into this. So Batman is very, what I say matters, nothing else.
You're breaking up, dude.
Oh.
Okay.
Am I any better now?
Yeah, that's better.
Yeah.
Okay. Batman's very, it's what I say matters, no other perspective gets a say, because I'm Batman. The question is fucking brass tacks, this is the world, how it is, I accept it that way, and I'm going to try to change it no matter what it does to me. Superman sees the world as it is and tries to be this beacon to bring it somewhere better. What are your thoughts on that, Milan?
I kind of agree with that. I've been saying this forever. Superman is a better Jesus than Jesus, both theologically and the whole Christ's entire sacrifice, quote unquote, doesn't work if you add even the tiniest bit of logic to it. The whole morality thing, which essentially bases on believe in me, love me, or I'll burn you to death forever.
See, that part's not fair. This is why I get so not wanting to bring up Christ or Jesus or anything, because Milan has no ability to be respectful while he's talking about it. He has to strawman it.
I'm not strong. Okay. I'm just gonna put this away. But it's yeah, I understand like why Superman is a better Christ than Christ, and I guess that's one of the reasons why I like him, because I used to love Christ when I was a Christian. Like I thought like before Superman I had Christ, and then well atheism happened and lost my faith in whatever. But yeah, Superman was always there. That's why I like characters like that, guys who just see the world for what it is. Like I hate those interpretations where Superman is an idiot. Like he's not an idiot. He's an investigative reporter. He knows how the world is. I mean, he can be anywhere at once. He can fly anywhere. He does disaster relief. He fights really fucking awful people. He knows that the world is full of bastards. But like you said before, he does hold himself up to such a high level that he will kill, and he has killed before, if there's no other alternative, and if he can't possibly neutralize the threat without terminating the target. Like the Zod, like when a couple of criminals escaped from the Phantom Zone, and these were like 3 Kryptonians, 3 Superman-powered guys, and they essentially killed an entire solar system worth of people. And he didn't kill. He essentially just kind of got rid of them, killed them, irradiated them with kryptonite. And he felt so bad about it. Even though these guys were just like genocidal maniacs, he exiled himself from Earth and had went off into space and tried to find himself and kind of try to.
Did Superman grow a beard?
Yes, he did, and he fought.
I like Superman with a beard.
Me too. I love Superman with a beard. He just I love that
the religious iconography. Hey.
Like he had a hammer, like that episode in Justice League Unlimited where he gets shot into the future.
Distant future.
Yeah.
The sun has gone from yellow to red.
Yeah. And he has like he has Thor's hammer. And he's draped in like red, white, and blue. It's American Thor Jesus, but
dude, we might have to review the 2 Marvel DC crossovers that happened in the 90s.
Yeah. But anyway, like I understand that. Like I also see like the shitty parts of the world and my life and humanity in general. But that's the thing. If you hold yourself up to such a high level, there's this thing that happens when people are, when I think in the worst times, people show you who they truly are. Like once you take away all the bullshit, all the time, all the smarminess, and add a real element of danger, the side fat of the human being gets washed away, and they are revealed for who they really are. You see the guys who run away from the danger, and you also see the guys who run to the danger to help people. And you see the guys who are causing the danger. And that's the level I try to keep myself at, just to keep myself pure in that way. Like, if there was a terrible thing, like, I try to do as much good as I possibly can. Even, like...
WWSD.
Yeah, exactly. WSS.
What the heck is that?
What? There's the... in Australia. But yeah, there's the What Would Jesus Do bracelets. I mean... I would like a What Would Superman Do bracelet. I think, let me explain my perspective on Superman here, because I can do it and be respectful.
Fair enough.
For the longest time, when I was going through, what eventually led to me being an atheist, I really, kind of, played around with different interpretations of Jesus. And one that I still hold on to fairly well because there's enough quote-unquote historical evidence to at least hint that Jesus was an actual historical figure. Mm-hmm. And when you look at the message of morality that Jesus portrays throughout the New Testament, it is very different from anything else in that region in that time period.
Sure.
So it almost seems like it has to be another person. Mm. So, I really like Jesus up until the sacrifice on the cross. And I like Jesus' moral standpoint of forgiveness and moving beyond. I think that's really good.
I've met anyone yet who dislikes that.
Yeah. The problem I have with Jesus comes at the sacrifice, because that's where it all breaks down. Because at the sacrifice, it's not anymore about you forgiving the people that have sinned against you.
Fruitcake.
Yeah.
No, it's at the sacrifice. It's no longer about you forgiving the people that have sinned against you. It's about Jesus forgiving you for sinning against others. And that doesn't work for me. That's very, very problematic.
Yeah.
Whereas Superman, when Superman makes the ultimate sacrifice, it's about him forgiving everyone for every human being or every creature of the universe for any wrong that they've done, and saying, now you need to learn to forgive each other, and then making the ultimate sacrifice like he does in All-Star Superman.
Yeah.
That's why I think that's why I think Superman is a better Jesus, because the sacrifice means more, because it requires something of us that isn't easy. It's easy, even if you really do believe in the idea of what are they, confession in the Catholic Church, of confessing your sins and repenting for them in Jesus' eyes purifies you. Even if you do believe in that, it creates a very big problem, because very often you're not required to seek the forgiveness of the party you've done something wrong to, the party you've sinned against. You're required to seek the forgiveness of Jesus, and that's very problematic.
Yeah, it's the misdirection of just saying, oh, you should go through Jesus instead of going straight to the source of the guy you harmed. So Jesus essentially becomes the middle guy.
Yeah, and like, certainly there are times where you're supposed to, like, one of my favorite examples, in something I saw years and years ago, a guy goes into the confession booth and he confesses to a murder, and the priest tells him that he has to turn himself into the police. He goes, but I've confessed, I need Jesus to forgive me. Jesus can't forgive you until you do something to repent. And that has to be what you do to repent. You have to confess to the police. I really like that. That's a very good, that's when it can be used well, but sometimes you can't go forgive, or you can't go seek the forgiveness of the person, especially if you've killed someone or something like that.
Or you've done something so terrible,
Yeah, there was a joke here in Australia. This is, once again, back in the early 90s, arguably a halcyon age of humanity, when it was if you know your Aussie comedic acts. This is from the Working Dog Crew, or the D Generation, when they did the Late Show on ABC. That's the Australian Broadcasting Corporation out here, and they did Heady Church with Drive-Through Confessional, and back then that was actually a joke here in Australia.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, and he goes, so what kind of forgiveness do you need? Can I get the 7 Deadly with the what? And he goes, you want fries with that? Just before he drives out of there. And
that's really funny.
Yeah, it was Tony Martin, Mick Malloy, and he leans in at the drive-through window and goes, "Body of Christ, that'd be nice," and they both give a thumbs up to the camera. The idea. Yeah, I'm gonna bring this back to comic books in a second, but let me tell you, the idea that you can have instant, what do you call it? The idea that you can have instant purification of everything you've done isn't a normal human idea. You do what you do and you're meant to learn from it. You're not supposed to have everyone's judgment until you give some sign or password or token gesture. I mean, it's not a what do you call it? It's not a command line on a computer where, delete all negative connotations from action. It doesn't work.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. And that's my problem with...
Did he just jump in out of...
I'm sorry? Am I good? Hello?
Crap.
Hello?
Yeah, sorry, man. You were cutting in and out.
Yeah, it's my bad. Milan, are you
Say
hearing me okay?
I can hear you.
Guys, I'm going to pause the
Ian, you're
recording
still
real
chopping
quick.
in and out a bit.
I'm going to pause the recording real quick and take this upstairs, alright?
Yep, still doing it.
Yeah.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because we can bring us back to Superman acting as a...
Hey guys, alright, I'm recording it. Hi everyone, sorry about that. Technical difficulties on my end, which is new, but just for continuity's sake, we're gonna blame it all on Milan, okay?
Definitely.
And
It was all
Australian
black magic.
And Australian elected gremlins.
Right.
Joker had
Anyway.
off the side.
But essentially, like, I love the fact that there's no real, like, people say that the Jesus allegory regarding Superman is sometimes a little bit on the nose. And, like, I can see where they say, where, you know, that is the case most of the time.
Totally.
But there is, there are places where it's done really well. I see Superman more nowadays as kind of like a relief worker, a fireman, a guy who doesn't do it because of like he does what he does because he genuinely, you know, wants to help people. And that very simple kind of need to help your fellow man appeals to me for some reason.
I really liked in Action Comics when Clark Kent, the reporter, was dead, so I think he was like Jack Kent or something, and he was a fireman. I thought that was really clever.
Yeah, and they also like the offshoot of Batman comic book that, you know, they continued the universe in the comic books. Basically, Superman is like, you know, he's old and gray, but his secret identity is Jack Kent, and he's a fireman. Like that's what he does, you know. So he's saving people all of the time now, and that's delightful. And like that's the type of, you know, there's this really great story, a short story done by the guys from The Adventures of Superman. It's kind of a digital comic.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially it's about this cult that forms around Superman and think that he's like the Messiah or whatever. And basically it starts with this one guy jumping off a skyscraper in a Superman t-shirt. Superman catches him, says like, you should go see somebody, you know, you should go talk to somebody, you know, get some mental help, dude. You know, it's just Superman being cool. And the guy says, "Oh, I don't need any help. Like, you know, you're savior. You're a god. You're the second coming, essentially." And Superman's like looking at him like I'm not a god. I'm just a guy with. I'm just a dude. I can't save everyone. And apparently, it's turned out that there's this cult.
If someone asks you if you're a god, you say yes.
You know, it's funny.
Oh,
what if like the Avengers took on Gozer? Are you a god? Yes.
Oh, well, good. Yeah. See you guys later.
Hammer throw. Delightful.
Yeah, that's right. Thor is technically
I stole
a god.
that joke. I stole that joke from Digital Cowboys. I don't care. But anyway, like Superman figures out that there's this giant freaking cult of just extreme Superman fans with men, women, and children who've basically just climbed up on every rooftop in Metropolis, in different locations in Metropolis, all ready to just jump off at once to see if, like, you know, Superman would save them. And like if Superman doesn't save me, you know, he is not the Messiah, and life isn't worth living after all. And Superman's like, you know, he talks to the leader like, I'm not a god, I'm just a guy with superpowers. And he makes it really clear, you know, call all your followers, tell them not to do this, all right? It's, you know, I'll do my best, I'll try to help them as many as I can, but, you know, if one of them dies, man, you know, like, he's so honest about it. But that's the thing, Superman isn't a god, and he makes it very clear. He says, like, no, like, I'm not a god, I'll save as many people as I can, but I'm not, you know, divine in any way. And that's the thing. He's a guy who, like, he has all the attributes of a god, but he absolutely doesn't see himself as that.
No.
And
well, that's actually one of the things I really like about the God of Evil or Darkseid. And I actually prefer to call him the God of Evil because that's what Darkseid is. It just sounds like it's incredible. Darkseid, already badass. God of Evil sounds so much more badass. Anyway, like, that's one of the things I really like about Superman and Darkseid's relationship is Darkseid looks at him as like, you could easily rule everyone. Look how easy it is for me. You wouldn't have any trouble at all. And Superman just cannot see himself in that way, no matter what. And there are all these different versions of Superman where even though he was raised differently, he's still a good person. Like, I really like Flashpoint, anorexic Superman. That was really cool.
Flashpoint anorexic Superman. No, I don't think I caught that one. I seen Red Sun, but no, not Flashpoint.
No. Let me explain it real quick, because it's really interesting.
Yeah, please.
In Flashpoint, which was a comic event that led into the New 52, and it basically like Butterfly Effect in the DC universe, right? Or the Butterfly Effect, not the fucking movie. The Butterfly Effect takes place in the DC universe, and a bunch of shit changes.
Okay.
So in that universe, Superman's spaceship, when he's a baby, lands in the middle of Metropolis as opposed to in the middle of Smallville. It lands in the middle of Metropolis, and the military gets a hold of it and basically locks him up underground for his entire life, and he's never seen the sun. And so he's just this, like, really, like, he looks like a Holocaust victim.
Crackhead Superman. Crackhead Superman.
I like anorexic Superman.
Okay.
Anyway, like, but still, even after he's been through all that, Superman's still a good person, which is really interesting. But I don't, like, I like that storyline. That's a really fascinating premise, and I think I'm going to get a hold of that issue.
Oh, man.
Because it sounds fantastic. But the thing is...
Yeah, go ahead.
The thing is, Superman, whether or not he's, willing to accept it, he thinks he's just a guy with powers, but, he was sent there for a reason. Like, a lot in modern canon, Jor-El sends Superman to Earth for a very specific reason, and it is to be their savior.
I'm sure there's a Russell Crowe joke in there somewhere.
Mm-mm.
Anyway, go
on. But like Ian, like, you got to pick up, essentially, you can get the comics as the Adventures of Superman. They're essentially collections of short Superman stories. They collect them in paper now. They let them all out like story by story. You can download them on your iPad or whatever, but they collect them every month in a collected issue. And these stories are just so good. They're just like, they're short and to the point. There's one story where Superman takes like there's this little girl. Like, she's basically describing, like, a Superman fight. He's fighting Metallo. She's like, yeah, like, I'm a Superman fan, and everyone thinks I should like Wonder Woman because I'm a girl, but, this and that, and he saved me from a kryptonite blast from Metallo, and he didn't stop fighting. And we figure out that this little girl is telling it from a children's ward for cancer patients. And and she's like telling the story, like, and then Superman comes in and is like, "How you doing?" And he makes a little Superman pendant and says, "You want to go flying?" And I like, that's just like anytime superheroes interact with like freaking cancer patients, I'm like, God damn it, man! Like, it's like, especially
that's
kids.
Pretty sweet.
Yeah.
I really love that scene in All-Star Superman the comic where he takes the Kryptonian doctors from the Bottle City of Kandor and takes them to the children's ward of the local Metropolis hospital, and the Kryptonian doctors are small enough to fit into the kid's bloodstream, and they kill off the cancer cells or whatever with their laser vision. So
awesome. Miniature super people. Nice.
Yeah. And like there's this joke that was made, like, oh, that's the only time Superman ever did that. Ever.
Yeah. Well, like, all right. So, like, here's another thing. Here's something that I've thought about, and don't give me the, well, Tony Stark wants to protect his technology from falling into the wrong hands bullshit, because, like, it's also really funny because it's a major part of Iron Man 3. All right. So Tony Stark makes an exoskeleton suit of armor that is capable of lifting cars and flight. Alright, so it's incredibly strong, and he can walk around in it. It's battery-powered and everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
Am I cutting out again? Oh, no, okay. Anyway, it's battery-powered and everything. Alright.
Nice.
What the fuck is Tony Stark doing for the paraplegic?
I know. Oh my god.
And here's the other thing that's really glaring about this. In Iron Man 3, spoilers, a major plot point is that the president is kidnapped because the vice president allows it to happen because the vice president is related to a girl without legs. So it's this big fucking part, and the villain had a product that was regrowing limbs. It's a major plot point that Tony Stark does nothing for the paraplegic.
Well,
Yeah,
Tony Stark doesn't care.
Now, see, this is why I'm glad we brought up morality. Okay, take that for an example. Okay, let's take Tony Stark and what he doesn't use his technology for. Okay, that's one point. Juxtapose that with there was a famous issue of the Green Lantern. I think Grant Morrison mentioned it in his book Super Gods, where he says where a woman walks up to the Green Lantern, which was Hal Jordan at the time, and says, "What are you doing for the black man?" He's like dumbfounded.
No, it's
by
not a
question.
woman. It's a black guy.
Sorry,
It's an old black guy.
Yeah. Okay. So a black person walks up to him and says, "What are you doing for the black man?" And I think the response universally is, "Saving your ass and your entire planet from threats that would kill everybody. You're welcome, by the way." And I've kind of got to lump Tony Stark in the same category. He's keeping everybody safe from his technology, and how he chooses to use it kind of and this is something I was mentioning to a friend of mine last night, it kind of verges on Randian objectivism, which says, what you're going to do with your technology is your business. And the fact is, he's already working on power generators, cars that can fly, a bunch of other things. He might not.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's just, like, I've never seen anything with Iron Man where he gives, like, a little girl a pair of fucking, mechanical legs or anything like that. And, like, if anyone has the ability to do it, it's him. Because the bitch doesn't need to be able to pick up a fucking car. She just needs to be able to walk down the street. I
always wondered who designed Professor X's floating wheelchair, or did Professor X keep it in the air with his thoughts alone?
No, he wasn't telekinetic. He was only telepathic.
Alright, fine.
Which, like, if he was telekinetic, that would be a very, very large amount of concentration just to fucking float around. Wouldn't it just be easier to, like, telekinetically make his legs work?
Yeah,
Anyway.
Depends on how you look.
No, it's just like the Tony Stark thing is kind of a joke, but at the same time, like, you hear it and you're like, that is kind of messed up, Tony Stark. Mm-hmm. And, like, you get the sense that it didn't even occur to me. And I'm like, well, it probably should. What makes it so glaring is just that in Iron Man 3, it's like there's a major plot point that there's a little girl without legs. And it's like, well, that kind of makes it stick out more, doesn't it? And, like, the argument all the time is, well, he can't risk his technology falling into the wrong hands. I'm like, dude, he's Tony Stark. I'm pretty sure he can design the thing to run on fucking AA. No, but, like, it's just a funny thing. To go to the Green Lantern example.
Yeah, thank you.
Hal Jordan as a racist is like, it's a really weird thought for Hal Jordan to be racist, because one of the things he does is kind of like that Han Solo thing of, like, punching bad guys and kissing the girl, and a lot of times the girl's like this alien princess, so, like, by definition, he cannot be racist then.
Still the Han Solo thing, but go on.
Yeah. If you stick your cock in it, you're not racist.
Well, no, it's just like he clearly doesn't, like, think of himself as better or think of, like, other species or races, whichever term you want to use, as lower than him or, whatever like that. He's clearly, like, if he's willing to fuck it, he can't be that racist, can he?
No. Yeah. But, like, the reason for that being, like, Kevin Smith did an interview with, what's his name? Neil Adams a while ago. Like 3, like, long fucking interview. And Neil Adams, fascinating motherfucker. The guy who, essentially,
yeah, we know.
Yeah. But essentially, he was talking about that moment, and he went to Julie Schwartz and said, I want to have a black Green Lantern, with Jon Stewart, and Julie, being the old Jew that he was, because Jews are kind of like meant to be like the liberals. We've been hounded. Our culture's been hounded. We'll accept everyone, and he basically. The guy that they got to replace Hal, whenever he would go away, was like this white gym teacher. And Neil kind of came up to Julie and said, like, so this ring comes down, and it searches for the bravest individual in all of the planet, right? And it finds another blonde white guy.
Well, it finds Guy Gardner.
Exactly. That's
Yeah.
more to prove my point. And like, it is like, can I make a black Green Lantern? And Julie's like, oh, right, fine, whatever. And, we'll call him, Jebediah Washington or something. The blackest American name you can have. And like, fuck that. I'm going to call him John Stewart, out-of-work architect in the Bronx. Of course he can't get a job because he's black, Just really kind of normal kind of thing. And he kind of, and him and Denny O'Neil kind of say, like, we can address this because, the comics were really whitewashed. I mean, even if you, like, the guys in, like, Adams was, like, allowed to put in black and, like, Hispanic people in the background because of he's, it's Neil Adams. You're not going to tell this guy no because his art gets you fucking, buyers. But everyone else, for the longest time, even if, like, you got a guy, like, drawing a black guy in the crowd, the editors were going to sift through, like, oh, you can't have that guy. Make him white. What? Make him white. Like, but like, it's a dude in the background.
I just have this image of, like, this, like, really, like Superman lands in, like, this African country, and there are all these, like, tribal African people with, like, the fucking, like, fur and, like, the spears and the shields and stuff, and they're just, like, crudely colored in with, like, white crayon.
Oh, my God. Funny enough,
white face.
But like it's so fucked up because there's actually in the Legion of Superheroes, they like one of the artists like just draw it like he would make the future like interracial, like there's a black guy here, Mexican here. The editor at the time basically said no. All the black people are on an island out in the Pacific somewhere. They all seceded from like proper white society, so everyone is white. And the guy's like, what? Like you can only have a black guy there if they're from that island. You can't just have them walking around, can you? And like it's just so funny. But Neil Adams, Neil Adams like kind of brought this shit up as like I'll draw I'll come up with this character, I'll write him, whatever. And he basically, him and Denny O'Neil were talking and said, how about we just have, like, an old black guy come up to Hal Jordan and ask him, like, well, like, what have you done for the black skins, essentially? That's quote-unquote.
Yeah, I mean, like, the line has done a lot for the Green Man and the Purple Man.
Yeah, but basically, and, like, it wasn't really meant to be, like, Hal Jordan himself, but just, like, it was... That guy was asking the comic book medium in general. It's like, yeah, you have plenty, blonde, blue-eyed white man in tights, saving the girl, but, what about us? And it was more like a general question to both the readers and, the comic book medium in general. It's more like a third, fourth wall-breaking thing. Just to...
Juan, can I make a joke, please?
Go right ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
How impressed were you that when not only is John Stewart created, but he's not called Black Lantern?
Exactly. The funny of that was actually propositioned. That was actually propositioned. Like Julie Schwartz, like I call him Black Green Lantern, and like what? I'm good. Like dude, literally that was brought up in the conversation. But it's funny. Like Neil Adams drew this guy, wrote this guy, just like the John Stewart we have today. After he left him, he tells these stories about like black guys would actually, and he colored him properly because if there, the rare times there was a black guy in a comic book, he would just be either colored in gray or shit brown. He actually used proper like a proper shade of brown. And like he'd talk about, he would go to convention. He had like black guys come up to him in fucking tears, saying thank you for finally representing us, because he drew a black guy like a black guy, and not like a deformed like quasi white guy in blackface, like fucking black guy. Like, yeah. Like he just tell all this stuff, like all these fucking guys, black guys, that come up to me just fucking crying, say thank you, and it's just so fucking sweet. I'm like, oh, ain't that cute? Like, Neil Adams is nice. Neil Adams is a cool motherfucker.
I remember at the beginning of the New 52, before it, like, turned into the nightmare that it's become now.
Oh, it's not that bad.
Yeah, okay, sure.
Go on.
in the book Batwing, which was originally written by Judd Winnick, and the first story arc on it's really good. I kind of lost interest after that. The first story arc was really good, but the artist on it, who's, oh my god, dude, like the panels look almost photorealistic. But the artist was in an interview, and he was saying, and he was asked, what was the biggest struggle with drawing this book? And he goes, I've never drawn this many black people, because it was Batwing, and it's African Batman in Africa, and it's not like, Congo, Africa. It's like in the middle. It's an urban area in Africa, because it was all part of Batman Inc. No, but it was a book all about Batwing. And
Cape Town. Was it set in Cape Town or a fictional?
I can't remember. Probably a fictional city. You can usually guarantee fiction in DC Universe.
It's been a while since I read that.
Yeah, but like it was a really interesting thing. Is like still today there are very few books with majority black characters in it. Like really in the first couple issues of Batwing, the only time a white guy shows up is Batman and Nightwing. They're about the only time you see a white character on panel. No, but it's weird, however long after Neil Adams introduces Jon Stewart and we get Black Panther, which I'm kind of wanting to get on a Black Panther kick right now. Gotta see if Netflix has that animated series that BET produced.
Oh, it's so good.
I've seen that one.
Oh, it's so fucking good.
I watched it a while ago, and I didn't think it was great, but I thought it was fun.
It's not an animated series. It's a glorified...
It's a motion comic.
It's a motion comic, but it's so good. I still love it.
Yeah, I'll have to check.
Dialogue is spectacular.
Oh, yeah,
So, yeah.
It makes up for the shitty animation.
Yeah, it's one of those interesting things. Like, it's so long after we have, Black Panther, which admittedly sounds like a joke, but turns out to be a really interesting mythology and everything. And Jon Stewart, like, it's funny, I was at work about a week ago, and I was talking to one of my coworkers who is black about the character Black Panther. He goes, wait, there's an actual comic book character called Black Panther? And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, is he like, was he like a member of the movement? Because my uncle was. I'm like, no, it's actually this really interesting, like, African tribal thing that they do with it. And, like, he goes,
not even really.
No, it's actually really interesing and serious. He's like, oh, cool, I might have to check that out sometime.
Funny enough, like, the time around the time that the Black Panther premiered in comics, the Black Panther, like, there's, like, it's a speculation, maybe they took the name from the comic, maybe, like, it's weird, it was happening around the similar time, so, like, I don't know, like, maybe this one guy was, like, reading a comic book and said, hey, this is a good fucking name, and they chose that. But
nobody wants to be guilty of an anachronism here, Milan.
Yeah,
let me tell you.
I know.
Well, when you think about it, Black Panther really does make no sense. How many different colored Panthers besides black are there?
Well, there's a white panther. Yeah, there's a couple.
There are? I thought they were all black. When I think Panther, I think of a black animal, a big black cat.
It's the most iconic one, but no, a couple of them look more like leopards.
I didn't know that.
And now you do. But no, I think the political... I have no idea what you guys are talking about. Anyway, but no, trust me, I'd be willing to put good money down. Like, I'm not an incredible student of liberal history, but I'm pretty sure the political movement came first, and Marvel latched onto the idea of naming the character after that. So
actually, no, not really, because once the book came out and the movement came out, they were like, ooh, fuck. Like, they were really, like, they didn't, yeah. Marvel, funny enough, I've been reading the Marvel story. It's kind of like the documented history of Marvel Comics. And Marvel, like, when this whole thing, the Black Panther started, they're like, oh, fuck. Because at that time, they were really, like, they didn't want to take any specific political view. They're like, oh, fuck, god damn it. It's like, and, like, they have, like, Black Panther say, I neither condemn nor condone the actions of the Black Panther people, of the Black Panther organization, and like so I that's why I think, like, yeah, I think they kind of took the name from the comics. But funny enough, Jack Kirby, the guy who created the Black Panther, he like, this really cool kind of story of redemption because Jack Kirby created this one character back like when he was 18, not 18, but like back in World War II days. This character called Whitewash Jones, which was like the most stereotypical racist Sambo caricature of a black guy. He was part of this like Captain America offshoot called the Young Allies. You had like Bucky Barnes and like tough New York kid stereotypes, and like Tubby and Knuckles and little kid that wears the alfalfa hat. But
oh man, I sorry, I was just looking up the Black Panther movement, and I always forget that Huey from the Boondocks is named after Huey Newton.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That'd be right.
Huey. But anyway, so Jack Kirby and Stan Lee kind of had this really offensive character. But funny thing is Jack Kirby writes he doesn't write, he draws this guy. Like this is back when he was fucking young, and he does this really offensive shit. And then years later, to make up for it, he makes fucking the Black Panther. He was actually, funny enough, Jack Kirby was had like a whole like a first few issues of a black romance comic drawn up.
Mm-hmm.
And hey, we can make this, and Marvel's like, nah, it's not gonna sell. It's like, if you wanna, you could see like the pencils of it. It looks pretty good, I gotta say.
Mm.
And it's like Jack Kirby, a really kind of it's weird, such that level of I did some shit in my past, but I was a dumb, stupid kid, and he comes up with fucking, he comes up with the what's his that? It's like so many black characters, God. And what's his name?
T'Challa or what?
No, T'Challa, the Death of Black Racer, a whole bunch of guys that slipped my mind. But yeah, yeah.
Milan, we're just getting kind of far away from the morality comics itself.
Sorry.
Actually, to the creation of it. So
yeah, I was just gonna say, to bring it slightly back on topic. We were discussing Nisha before and people not being able to live up to imposed morality, which is kind of where I came with the question. You could argue, however, you can argue that there is that comic books have actually filled in an interesting niche that a lot of religions have left open, which is moral guidance for young individuals. I'll tell you this much. I got friends in the metaphysical community, people who do tarot readings, fortune telling of any particular sort you can imagine. And let me tell you, a lot of what they do is basically just, not exactly telling people how to wipe their ass after they've, taken a dump on the toilet, but, just telling people that, yes, you should forgive this person, and yes, you need to be a nice individual. You'd be... That is one interesting thing about, take Star Wars, for example. Star Wars, a lot of, George Lucas himself said he wrote that to get kids to believe in God. That was
really
one of his... I am not making that shit up. Go online and look it up right now. But if you're listening to this podcast, get on there and look up George Lucas's reason for creating Star Wars and putting the Force in there and ripping off the Secret Fortress and Taoism. You get into that though, and a lot of it's been my observation with human beings in general that we tell stories to impart not just factual information. You can do that with a textbook, but if we want to make information stick, you've got to...
Telling stories is about imparting emotional information.
Exactly. And if you don't impart any emotional information on something, it's very rare that the information sticks around. And
that's why most of history, let me rephrase that. That's why the best parts of history are anecdotes. My personal favorite. So Alexander the Great comes into Athens, and all of the wise men and scholars and philosophers flock to the city square where he's holding court, and He's the fucking. It's like the president coming to town. Everyone's asking for funding. All these scholars are asking for, can I get money to do research in this? Blah blah blah.
Because he actually funds the arts, unlike the leaders we have today. Yeah, I know.
Yeah. There's a lot of like everyone's asking for money and stuff, and very little has changed. And Alexander's looking around and he's like, oh, okay, there's my teacher Aristotle. There's this guy. He sees all these famous thinkers because that's what Athens is the town of thinkers.
Absolutely.
He goes, where's Diogenes? And everyone gets like really kind of quiet, and they go, he's not here. And he goes, well, bring him here. He won't come. And so Alexander the Great, at the time, the most powerful man in the world, I cannot stress that enough. All right, Alexander the Great stands up and says, if Diogenes will not come to Alexander, Alexander will come to Diogenes. So Alexander the Great and his fucking bodyguards walk through the streets of Athens and find Diogenes, who is a man without a home, wearing nothing but a loincloth, sitting inside a giant... inside basically a wine barrel in the middle of a street. And he's sitting there, and it's a nice sunny day, and he's taking a nap. And Alexander the Great and his friends come up, and, Diogenes wakes up, but he doesn't look, doesn't bother with it. He just wakes up because he hears him. And Alexander the Great says, Diogenes, I am Alexander the Great. I've come to Athens, and I wish to speak with you. Diogenes doesn't react. And Alexander says, I'm here to give you anything you want.
Wow.
And Diogenes doesn't react. And he goes, anything in all the kingdom that I possess can be yours. And Diogenes says, I want you to get out of my son. And all the bodyguards and stuff, like, think about it. He could have had his ass killed right there, no questions asked. All the bodyguards start, mocking him, making fun of Diogenes. Oh, he's just a stupid, crazy, homeless guy. And Alexander, goes, shh. If I were not Alexander, I would be Diogenes.
Oh, shit, son. That is some classy shit right there, son.
It's one of the best stories in philosophy. Diogenes has a lot of great stories in philosophy. You want to read some very entertaining philosophy? Read the stories of Diogenes. To connect back to Nietzsche and then back to comic books, Nietzsche has the famous fable in Thus Spake Zarathustra, which was written like the Bible, but the morals are completely different. In Thus Spake Zarathustra, Nietzsche has the famous fable of the madman with the lantern who ran through the town square with a lantern looking for God, and when the learned men mocked him for, perhaps he is lost like a child, and the man threw down the lantern and says, well, if I cannot find God, then what are we to replace him with? And it's Nietzsche building a whole point about now that God is dead, what happens with morality? What do we structure it upon? And ultimately comic books, but the fable of the madman with the lantern is based on Diogenes, the story of Diogenes, who once traveled through the market in the middle of the goddamn day with a lit lantern that he probably found somewhere because he was homeless with a lit lantern, and he's looking around, and anytime anyone asks him what he's looking for, he says an honest man. Really like that.
Yeah, and that's getting into the meat and potatoes of what I think that's one of the meat and potatoes of what Superman represented, to get onto Milan's example of morality when it came to his initial incarnations. Once again, I go back to Grant Morrison's book Super Gods if you want a great history of Superman, because he started off as a left winger, the kind of guy who was who was fighting back against corrupt landlords, wife beaters. I mean, he was a moral paragon. He was the kind of guy who'd stand up for someone. He would use that. That I think really gets to the heart of what Milan's been talking about with using Superman as an example of morality to go off, because he's someone who could use his power devastatingly, but the point is that he embodies restraint.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go on.
To get a little bit away from Superman,
Okay,
one of the things I find, because we've just been on him for quite a while, on and off, but
Fair enough.
one of the things I find really interesting about superheroes in general, and there's obviously exceptions, but for the most part, is they're often called the modern mythology, and in the Nietzschean terms, they do fit the role that God has left, in a lot of senses. With the idea of God being dead, that we have nothing to base our morality upon, because for centuries upon centuries, humans believed in God or gods, and that's where we derived moral law from. But now that science had come in and fucking killed him, because you don't need God to explain the natural world, why would you need him to explain the moral world, which is something that's taking time, but a lot of people are catching on to. Atheism is rising.
Still one of the biggest arguments. I'm an agnostic, just so that one's taken care of there.
No, just like atheism is on the rise, though. And that's not necessarily a good thing or a bad thing. It's just something that's happening now. That if you don't need God to explain the natural world, why would you need him to explain the moral world? And then it leads into the question: do you need morality? Do you need do humans require morality, or is that something that's just been holding us back, which is what Nietzsche thought, by and large. And so he said that we needed someone, an overman, to come in and create morality, to be the new standard of morality, but more so to be the standard that everyone could become at some point. And I think that's interesting that comic books, going back to Superman, Overman, Superman, Übermensch translates to both of those.
Yeah.
Superman is the direct, literal translation of Übermensch. And it's so interesting that comics, these heroes are often seen as, by and large, there's different versions, blah, 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 but are often seen as these morally upright characters that we should all strive to be like in one way or another. And of course that changes from time to time. Sometimes they kill because that makes good drama, but ultimately they feel bad about it, or they recommend not doing that. I think it's interesting. This idea of comic books being the modern mythology isn't just some funny little thing that someone rattled off. Maybe there's a lot to that.
Oh, there's absolutely a lot to that. Let me break it down for you. This is coming from my own experience with the metaphysical community. People will create mythology. It is not something I think we can help. We can't stop ourselves. As long as you have people who dream, you will have myths. You will have allegorical retellings of things that try and simplify your perspective on something, and then try and use it in a more user-friendly way. I know people who do dream interpretation, and they always tell me the one big rule of dream interpretation is that your mind is trying to recontextualize things, like saying this is like this as this is like this. What happens with dreams is it can never say it to you straight. It can't just say, this is what happened, this is where you were, because your mind's trying to assimilate the data, so that wouldn't work. The thing is, with comic books, movies, TV, Star Wars is a great example, with, say, the fall of any number of Jedi to the dark side, shows them becoming what I call irrational. That is, once again, we're going back to the ancient Greeks and their deliberations on morality. To become irrational means you do not have a working ratio. You don't have an understanding of where you fit in with stuff. The beneficial side to comic books, and this is what got basically hammered into the dirt in the post-war period over that hysterical little research who claimed that, comic books, chewing gum, pinball, and all the other stuff he didn't like and didn't understand were causing moral decay in America.
The corruption of the youth, isn't it?
Seduction of the innocent.
There you go. Thank
blah,
you.
Blah blah blah. You know the song, and it's changed topics a few times later on. Milan did
video games and stuff.
Yeah, Milan did a great rant about that on his channel a couple days ago. And yeah, every so often you get some. I'm not gonna use my operative wording, but some worthless little twerp who's just trying to stir up controversy, who claims some moral panic about that sort of stuff. But using, like I was saying, when you get the corruption of like these paragons, like the Jedi Knights, like you see in Star Wars, it shows someone who has lost a sense of perspective on their life and what they're doing. You know, whether it's someone like, say, just to shift away from comic books and go to the movies and the games, someone like Revan from the expanded universe in Knights of the Old Republic, who starts off as a Jedi Knight pursuing power for the sake of others, and eventually becomes corrupted and seeks it only for himself. Or you take what do you call it? Is someone slow clapping me there?
Oh, sorry, I'm popping my knuckles.
Okay.
A little too close to the microphone.
I get that all the time. Don't worry about it. Yeah, or you get somebody who just, figures, hey, pushing people around is fun. I should do this more often, which happens. Mm-hmm. But it's funny how this once again flies in the face of what Nisha was saying. Yes, occasionally, what he was saying about the Superman, you do need people to be exemplars. You do need people to say, I am a good example of what morality is. I am just, I am kind. Technically speaking, the My Little Pony crowd are into this big time. They just don't realize it. I'm not kidding you on that one. I swear to God, if Lauren Faust, the woman who wrote the show, wasn't into, metaphysics and studying astrology, I do not know what I'm talking about anything. But yeah, if you look at it, there's always a place for moral guidance. Otherwise, you've got a lot of power and you don't understand how to use it. That, in a lot of ways, is why we create so, like you were saying, the anecdotes, the stories, the emotional dramas. It's to remind ourselves how to do better. That was actually, before you got cut off, you were using an example from, I know we're going back to Superman, but the example of people jumping off rooftops simultaneously in a Superman comic to prove that Superman is the savior of Metropolis. Which, by the way, Milan, you said that Melbourne, the city, when you came down here, you said that Melbourne reminded you nothing so much of as Metropolis.
Oh yeah, definitely. It just Metropolis, mostly, like, once I got into that mall and saw that tower inside and the giant clock, I called it hipster central, and it just reminded me of, it just looked like fucking Wonderland, but for hipsters. It's amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry, just wanted to bring that up. But it was like I was saying. The solution that I would have put in there, which would have once again challenged the cult, which let's be honest, it's somewhere between a fan club and a cult, which is kind of what they said in the Gods of Arcalan. I've got to send you guys a link for that. Which is have the rest of the Justice League teleport in to save these guys, specifically without Superman. Or even, like, I don't know, give all those people a parachute and turn it into the world's biggest experiment in base jumping. You're laughing, but it's a shock reaction. You're thinking, hang on a second, that would have actually made for an interesting storyline. Because it would.
No, I'm just trying to think about the practicalities of getting everybody a parachute, and like, how do you make sure they pull it at the right time? And
if you got teleporters from either a space station or a moon base, whichever one you want to say the watchtower is this week, let's face it, you can probably pull that off. So that's what I'm saying is, if you could call in the Justice League or even just the domestic authorities of Metropolis to fill in the gaps, I think that would have been an infinitely more satisfying ending than... Actually, you didn't say how it ended. You said Superman was speaking to the cult leader.
Oh, this is how it ended. It's really quite fascinating. Basically, he gets into the center, the epicenter of the square that the majority of them are doing this. They're all over Metropolis, but the majority of them are in Metropolis Square. And it's like he's trying to talk them down, like, don't do it. I can't save you all. I'm not a god. and then Metallo hits him, like, Metallo comes out of nowhere and just, beats the ever-living shit out of Superman. And, like, and Superman lets him do this, and everyone, and all the people from the rooftops, in Superman t-shirts, are looking at this and they're seeing Superman bleed, and then they're like, no, and they just go home. They just call everyone and said he's not the savior.
Not bad.
Yeah, and basically the thing is, the in the beginning of the issue, or the story, Superman was fighting Metallo, and like the guy jumped off while he was fighting the guy. While he was
that's right. Yeah.
And so let's say like let Metallo out. I'll let him beat the shit out of me.
Yeah.
Okay, let me just say this real quick to that point. That's a pretty good ending, and I'm sure that's more consistent with where the story was, but symbolically, I think it would have been more interesting if Batman was the one that showed up, beat up Superman.
Hilarious.
No, not because it's hilarious, but because Batman, like, the thing that's always appealing about Batman is no matter how unrealistic he is, the thing that makes Batman interesting is that he is a man, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's something that always makes Batman so fascinating and relatable in some way. Everyone at one point or another that is a Batman fan wants to be Batman. It seems at least somewhat achievable because Batman's human. He doesn't have any special powers. The only thing that really separates you from Batman is your will and your money.
And the fact that he's basically an Olympic athlete level fitness. Trust me, I want some of that. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is like
it's heightened. It's definitely not completely realistic, but it seems within your grasp if you just try hard enough, kind of thing. You just gotta believe hard enough, and you can be Batman.
You know what's the greatest superpower ever?
What?
Money.
It works for Tony Stark and Batman and fucking Ted Kord.
Hang on, Ted Kord?
Blue Beetle.
Right, yeah.
Well, no, actually, it doesn't work that well.
I was going to say, technically, there have been a couple of Blue Beetles, but I know the one you're talking about.
Yeah, no, but I think, Milan, do you have any final thoughts? Because I think we're at a good place to end the video, though.
Let's see. Morality is a thing, like, people love stories, and as young people and like humans in general, people like to have stories, and comic books, though some would say that they are, simplistic and juvenile and for kids, well, read some of the old myths, they're quite extravagant and over the top, but there's still kernels of truth and decency in them, all depending on what myths you read. And if you read the Greek myths, then, rape is alright as long as Zeus does it. But, Zeus is a fucking dick! Fuck him!
Okay, let's
Anyway, but yeah, I mean, comic books are for everyone, and you can glean, if you can glean some genuine, helpful messages about morality, then that's great. And I want to end this by reading this one little thing. Basically, there's this 2-issue story about Superman in the 30s. What happens is, there's this Nazi rally. This is pre-World War II. The Nazi parties, there were Nazi parties in New York City, and essentially,
we know the history.
Yeah, and essentially, there's this Nazi rally in the middle of Times Square, and there's this lavishly dressed, like, Nazi, blonde hair, green cape, yellow spandex, kind of,
details too much, get to the thing.
Basically, there's a Nazi rally in the middle of Times Square. There's this giant fucking Nazi sign hanging from, like, a building. And there's, like, a whole slew of Nazis. And basically, the sign, it's this huge concrete thing, falls down, and it's about to crush all the people, all the Nazi sympathizers. And Superman comes in, catches it, brings it back. And all the fucking people, they see this, and they start sig-heiling Superman. Sig Heil, and Lois Lane is there. And the guy, the bad guy in this Nazi Superman, the guy in green and yellow starts yelling, "This is our Superman! This is the Ubermensch! This is great! This is great! He has come!" And Superman gets real mad, turns around and just smashes the Nazi symbol with one punch. And then he turns around and he just yells, grabs the mic and says, like, "Listen up, folks. Call me whatever you want, but I will never be a champion of Nazism. I will not be anyone's symbol of hate, racial prejudice, and genocide. I am an American. Like all true Americans, I must strive to be a champion of tolerance and diversity, justice and kindness. That's what being an American is. That's what being an American, ... a human being is all about. Shame on you if you think otherwise." And it's just that's, I know it's cheesy and like, Nazism is bad, but it's just like, yeah.
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah, like, but it's just like.
No comment.
That's a stance I can
but
get
like,
behind without much thought.
Funny enough, like my family is like really fucking Russian, like really to the right. Like my stepdad considers, Nazi rallies in Moscow, skinhead rallies, as being youthful exuberance, and like at least they're getting rid of the filthy scourge of immigrants. And like to me at least, yeah, I grew up in the household like that, and just seeing like, no, fuck you, Nazism is bullshit. I know it seems juvenile, but just having these messages of just genuine goodness come from a person who you care about, and it's just good. There's no words. It's just decent things said by decent people stay with you, even though those people might not be actually flesh and blood, but made of paper and ink.
Good summation.
Well, what makes a person has very little to do with, biology.
What?
All right, so that was a very good discussion. There's more to be said, but I think we're at a pretty good ending point on this one. I think I've said all that really needs to be. I feel like all my major opinions about this have been expressed, and I thought we had a really good discussion about this. Thanks, guys. This was a lot of fun. Milan.
Yeah.
Thank you. Griffin, thank you for coming on. That was a lot of fun. I'm definitely bringing you back. I love having in-depth conversations. You do a great job, man.
That's kind of
go subscribe to this dude. I haven't even watched any of his videos, and he's amazing.
Yeah,
I know, right?
I'll tell you what, as soon as you put this video up, I'm going to leave a comment in the comment thread. If anyone wants to draw me out, I can't speak for Milan or anyone else here, but look, if you send a message to me, I will happily discuss in depth, if necessary, a point of view with anyone who wants to chew my ear about it.
Yeah. All right, and thanks everyone for listening. Next week, I got a hold of Bill. Milan, I hope you're there because this will be an interesting video, especially if we have a non-Whovian's perspective here.
Mm-hmm.
Next week, we're going to be talking about the 2 Peter Cushing Doctor Who movies, which what makes them interesting for people that don't know Doctor Who is they are not in canon with anything else Doctor Who.
Nope.
So like they just, the characters are even technically speaking named differently and everything. So it's completely out of canon movies that were made with similar, very, very similar characters. So we'll be talking about those next week.
Okay, groovy.
Yeah. All right, everyone. So thank you for listening, and until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the Madman.
And I'm a guest
And we are
host.
Oh, yeah, good. You're the guest. Sorry, most people just don't know what to say, so I don't want to put pressure on them.
That's cool.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing this.